At midnight, I received my diagnosis. By 5:30 a.m., after a restless night worrying about illness, what might lie ahead, and obsessively retracing every single interaction over the past 2 weeks, I hit send on an email to a small number of people. Here's what I wrote. Dear friends, as some of you know, there was a confirmed case of COVID-19 in our preschool community this week. On Thursday night, I developed a headache, which I attributed to seasonal allergies. As Friday progressed, I developed an intermittent wet cough, and a low-grade fever. I immediately got tested, and the results came back overnight. I've tested positive for COVID-19. I'm sending you this note because I believe we have had at least some socially distant contact during the 2 weeks before this positive test. A short while later, my phone buzzed with a message. I heard the news. How can I help? And then emails and texts began pouring in. I had barely processed my own diagnosis, and it seemed like already everyone knew. The news had traveled fast. Of course, my condition would worsen significantly, and before the weekend was over, I would find myself in the hospital. But what I did that night as I tossed and turned and worried that I too would become a vector is something that health departments and the CDC have spoken about for months now. Contact tracing. The first line of defense in the battle against the coronavirus. I took out a notepad and my calendar, and carefully, I thought through every single interaction of the previous 2 weeks. Where had I been, and who did I see? A part of this process was pretty easy. I knew who I had seen in the hallways of the synagogue office. I knew that I had spent time with some folks in this sanctuary recording a video that same week. But other interactions were more challenging. Did I run into anyone walking by our front yard? Had I gone to the gas station or the grocery store? And if I did, who did I see? In total, there were 32 contacts on my list. Some of them were people I knew well, and others would be impossible to track down. What I did in those wee hours of the night, as I worried about my own illness, as I worried about how to communicate this illness with others, is contact trace. A term that was unfamiliar to so many of us just 18 or 19 months ago. The benefits of that practice are well known and rehearsed at this point. The CDC will tell you that contact tracing is the key to slowing the spread of COVID-19 as it helps protect us. It helps protect our families and our entire community. When we trace our contacts, we let people know that they may have been exposed, that they should monitor their health for signs and symptoms. These notifications may encourage some to go and get tested, and others may sooner be able to self-isolate or quarantine if they know they are a close contact with someone who is themselves sick. We contact trace. We do this action in order to keep ourselves safe. But beyond personal protection, Contact tracing is a sound practice to do on behalf of a whole community, of the whole community. In certain instances, it's the information gathered from this practice, from contact tracing, that helps authorities and health departments and those studying this virus understand its spread and of the spread of this contagion and its variants. Provincetown this past summer stands out as a signature moment where we learned about spread through large-scale contact tracing. And what we learned in that moment, what we learned in that practice of tracing contacts, of knowing who we were interacting with, is information that has changed how we make our own decisions. How we gather this morning is influenced by what we've learned along the way, by people tracing their contacts, by being aware of who they interacted with and sharing that information with others so that we can learn from it as a community. And still, contact tracing has another purpose in our lives. When we engage in this practice, we are exerting control over our circumstance. A circumstance that often feels uncontrollable. Whether rooted in morbid curiosity or genuine concern, when we learn that another has been diagnosed with this illness, we want to know, how did you get it? And in these answers, in the answers of, how did you get it? Or where did it come from? We can come to some summary judgment about unnecessary risk or an ill-advised action, all of which may help us feel control over our situation. That somehow we're going to be protected because we won't make the same mistakes, or I can learn from what someone else did wrong. Contact tracing is all about exerting control over what feels uncontrollable. If any of what I'm talking about this morning sounds familiar, and I know for some of it does, it's because this practice of contact tracing closely parallels a critical Jewish practice that sits at the heart of our high holiday season. It's something we call Heshbon HaNefesh, which we translate to mean accounting of the soul. And it's a process where we take stock of our lives and bring awareness to the year gone by. In particular, we're to consider the areas where we may have missed the mark, relationships that went astray, intentional and incidental moments where we may have hurt others and where there is follow-up necessary. We sit down with a notepad and a calendar, and we review the year gone by, trying to note our wrongdoings, our bad behavior. Quite literally, we are doing an accounting of our souls. Of course, like contact tracing, there are many benefits to engaging in this process of Heshbon HaNefesh. One benefit to this practice is to see it as a preventative measure. By reflecting on our wrongs and where we went astray, we both bring awareness to what needs repair and alert ourselves to what we might do wrong in the future. If someone is hurt by something we have done, there is likely something we can do about that. We can take responsibility for our actions. We can change our ways. We can say, I'm sorry. There is power in pursuing forgiveness. And in doing this, we are trying to prevent further wrongdoing as we look to the year ahead. But the process of Heshbon HaNefesh does more than just allow us to repair our relationships as a preventative measure. Through engaging in this practice, we can recall the events and experiences of the year gone by. By accounting for our souls and considering the wrongs we have done, we also recognize our growth, our challenges, and the many experiences we have had throughout this past year. And perhaps this year we feel that need more than ever before. Fewer vacations and fewer life cycle celebrations, an outsized focus on screen and socially distant experiences. The whole of this past year can sort of meld together into one endless blob. Yet the practice of Cheshbon HaNefesh asks us to counteract that impulse. Instead, it asks us to think precisely and individually about our experiences and our impact on the world around us. Finally, like contact tracing, Cheshbon HaNefesh too can give us a sense of control. By focusing on and then correcting our wrongdoings, we gain a sense of power over our vulnerabilities and inadequacies. We are not perfect, and we certainly all make mistakes. By highlighting these moments, and working to overcome them, we are claiming agency and responsibility. We do have control over how we behave. There is something we can do to repair the wrongs we have done. By cultivating an awareness of our misdeeds, we are exposing control amidst the chaotic and hurried lives that we all live. And just like there is wisdom to doing contact tracing when we get sick, there is wisdom to doing Cheshbon HaNefesh for this year gone by. There is real work to do in all of our relationships. There is a task to be done. Now, some of you might be thinking, Rabbi, a sermon about forgiveness? Isn't that for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement? What are you doing talking about that on Rosh Ha-Shanah? Well, here's the thing. Forgiveness is the mode of the season. It's the 10 days of repentance. It's the season of awe. And today we sound the shofar. Today we inaugurate the new year to wake ourselves up, to bring ourselves into relationship with each other, and to remind ourselves that, we've got some work to do. We have relationships to repair. And yes, Yom Kippur is all about forgiveness, but Yom Kippur is all about a sense of spiritual forgiveness. Forgiveness that we attain between ourselves and God. Before we can address the spiritual nature of our lives, we have to get right with one another. And Cheshbon HaNefesh is a critical tool in accomplishing that goal. But I think this practice of evaluating our year gone by, of taking out our calendars and our notepads, I think it's missing something. Both when we contact trace and when we do Cheshbon HaNefesh, as I've described it this morning, our framework for reflection is something negative. We're responding to the risk of infection, the worry that we might become a vector. We are looking for the moments where we might have offended others. We try to remember where we went wrong and where things went astray. So the lens through which we examine our year is negative and full of our failures and our mistakes, which, by the way, there are many. I don't know about for you, but for me, it's always much easier to remember what has gone wrong than it is to remember what has gone right. Of course, negative moments are sticky and thorny and difficult, but they are not hard to remember. Instead, our mistakes and our errors are the things and the memories that stick with us. For me, often, more than anything else. What we need as well is a practice that invites us to consider the good the positive, our successes, and our achievements of the year gone by. And I think there's room for that in Cheshbon HaNefesh as well. That Cheshbon HaNefesh is not just about our wrongdoings, but it is a gratitude practice as well. Beyond the attention we give to infection and hurt, we need to take out our calendars and our notepads and reflect on positive interactions, the gifts that animate our lives, our own achievements in helping others, and how others have offered help and support in our direction. Doing so is necessary and needed now more than ever. And this year, I feel that I know this intimately because of my experience of illness and how our community responded when I was in my moment of need. When I found myself alone, lying prone in a hospital bed, trying to breathe deeply, I was buoyed by the calls and texts which came my way. A member of our congregation sent me a joke every single day. And while all of those jokes are not worthy of repeating in a setting like this one, they meant more to me than I could begin to explain. And those were just the actions of one person. If I was to take out a list and write down the names of every single person who sent me a note, who sent me a message, a card, that they were thinking of me and praying for my health, well, it would fill journal upon journal and pages upon pages. To imagine that, to consider that, brings me a sense of awe and appreciation. When my wife and children were alone, both quarantining and navigating illness of their own, a member of our community donned a respirator and a face mask in order to mold Play-Doh and draw on colored paper. Toys arrived for our kids to play with. And in the face of many difficulties, you let us know that we were not alone. Each act of sacrifice and kindness stands out in its own astonishing moment of generosity and care. And then there was the nourishment which got us through. Burekas and black bean soup, challah and hummus. Day after day, we experienced abundance and security, knowing that individual actions of so many were addressing our immediate need, giving us comfort, walking with us on our journey. Sitting down and listing out each of those meals and who cooked it and what they made, well, it's revealing, and it actually makes us more intimate with the people with whom we are in relationship with, eating their food and being in relationship in that way. But to take all of that list as a whole, again, it's beyond comprehension. But we need to do it. We need to write it out. We need to see it so that we can have gratitude, so that we can feel appreciation. Beyond style and taste, in the act of feeding another, we give life and we ensure stability. But of course, many of you know the feeling that comes from doing these actions and being the recipient of this gratitude, of these kind actions. Because over the past year, one of the most critical functions of our synagogue community has been our efforts in precisely this realm. Perhaps you baked challah or made a lasagna through our Bikur Cholim efforts to be delivered to a member of the community in need. Or maybe you received one of those deliveries. Perhaps you donated a meal to another as you made reservations for Passover Seder or a Shabbat dinner here at the synagogue. Or maybe you were part of Baker's Dozen and helped bring sweetness and goodwill to our frontline workers, social service agencies, and critical partners of our synagogue community. it's easy to lose sight of the big and small ways that good, decent, and transformative actions take place in our lives. And so, Heshbon HaNefesh reminds us we have to do this ourselves. We have to review our year and remind ourselves how we helped others and how others helped us. While it is essential and worthwhile to know how we have erred, we also need to feel our successes, our achievements, and our gratitude for the lives we have lived over the time since we have last gathered for this holiday. But more than an inward and reflective feeling of gratitude for the past, the practice of Heshbon HaNefesh can help shape our intentions and vision for the year ahead. By noting our successes, we can seek to replicate and build on them. By recognizing how others helped us, we can be inspired to do the same for them and for others. And that is precisely where I find myself on this Rosh Hashanah. As I do the work of Heshbon HaNefesh, I find myself, as I hope you've heard already, overwhelmed and stirred. I am grateful on this holiday. I am grateful to you. I am grateful to you for your individual actions, which helped me personally, and I'm grateful to you for the actions that you've done for others to build our community, to make us stronger. I'm grateful for your trust, the trust you put in our leadership, in our decision-making, in the choices we have to make as we confront the reality of the world around us. I'm grateful to you for your prayers, for joining us to pray together this morning, and I'm grateful to you for your investment in the project that is the Synagogue and Congregation B'nai Emunah. We are not one thing. We are a collection of your actions, of what you bring together, what you make manifest in this world. You are B'nai Emunah. I am B'nai Emunah. We are B'nai Emunah. And because of Heshbon HaNefesh, we can feel this acutely. On this new year, let us be awakened and called into a practice of spiritual contact tracing, Heshbon HaNefesh. Let that practice help us see our lives more clearly. And may this practice lead us to repair what needs fixing, to celebrate that which deserves celebration, and to feel gratitude for our community, each other, and the gift that is the year ahead. On this new year, on this 5782, I wish you a year of sweetness and hope and blessing. So may this be our blessing. And let us all say, Amen. Amen. Amen.